Alright then guys, welcome back to the Eagerman. Now, it has been a while since I last recorded a video here. I had pre-scheduled a bunch of reels from all the podcasts that I've done, okay, and so I ended up relying on those so much that I completely forgot about, uploading fresh talking head content. And that said, the reels actually did benefit the channel a lot, okay, like since started uploading them consistently, at least twice a day. I had pre-scheduled them. The channel gained over 20 new subscribers. Okay, so they've definitely helped get the content in front of more people. So I'll definitely be keeping plenty more reels lined up moving forward. I've got 25 ready to be pre-scheduled from the previous podcast I did. But anyway, look, in this video I want to talk about why your 20s are for making mistakes cheap. Okay, and I personally love talking about this aspect of male lifestyle because it's different and it's very practical, right? It's not the sort of wishy-washy or the sort of fluff you get out there in the self-improvement world. But yeah, the reason why I want to talk about this idea of why our 20s are for making mistakes cheap, mistakes which don't cost you much, is because the problem with most people in their 20s is that they're scared. Okay, they're scared to pick the wrong job. They're scared to do something for the first time, and they're scared to start something that might fail, right? But the thing we're all not realizing is that it's the only time in your life when the cost of screwing up is low, right? Because the same mistakes you pay a cheap price for in your 20s can be actually very costly in your 40s or your 50s. Okay, for example, a wrong job at 24 costs you experience and a bit of time, right? You can learn from that and make sure it doesn't happen again. But a wrong job at 48 or 54 can potentially cost you the roof over your head. Like you don't have the space needed to move freely, if you know what I mean. And it's like every year you wait to take a risk, or to fuck up, or like to experiment in life, to learn through failure, the price of that same mistake just goes up. It just increases higher and higher. And so I have what I call the cheap mistake concept. Okay, and it's basically where I look at it's basically where you think of mistakes like investments. Okay, in your 20s you're playing with a smaller capital, right? You've got less responsibility, you've got fewer attachments, you've got lower stakes. You can't fuck up much, right? You've got time to recover. You've got the space to move on the chessboard, if you would, right? If you lose a few thousand now, you can make it back later, right? You lose 2 years in a wrong relationship, right? You can still start over. It's not that big of a deal, right? Because you've got time on your plate, right? You've got space on the chessboard to move around. But at 40, the same mistake, it's not a lesson, it becomes a liability, right? Because now there are other people depending on you, right? There's a mortgage, a wife, kids, a house, your reputation, etc., etc. Like, you've got much more to lose when you're older as opposed to when you're younger, right? The same risk you could have taken at 24 for cheap suddenly becomes too expensive to afford. You know what I mean? This is why the more you wait, the higher the price gets for making the same mistake. And I'll give you an example from my own life. Like, this is one of those things that I've sort of realized over time through personal experience. Like a couple of years ago, I was working as a front office supervisor, okay, at a hotel in London. And working as a front office supervisor at a hotel, it's a big thing. It's you're on your way to climbing the ladder, right? And my salary was decent, right? Commute to work was also very short, like within 30 to 40 minutes I was there, right? And overall my life was stable. But I knew if I stayed comfortable, I'd never grow. I'd never really get to the top of this hierarchy. So I took a leap and I applied for a higher position at another hotel, which was a bit further down, a bit further away from home. And I got the job, right? The pay was the same, right? And also I had to do long hours because it was a managerial position, right? Long commute, right? Because it was further away from home, and less money in my account at the end of the month because my salary was exactly the same as my previous job. Despite being in a managerial position, I was actually, because I was spending a lot on commuting, I had the same, if not less, at the end of the month in my account, right? So even though I used to get the monthly pass, so technically on paper it looked like a mistake, right? But that mistake later down the line, guys, it opened up doors to a bigger hotel. Right now, I'm in a much bigger hotel than I was before. Right, 1,100 bedrooms. Right, more opportunities. I met more people. Right, and more experience in the hospitality industry. Like now, I'm in a position where I'm handling large scale operations and I'm dealing with challenging scenarios. Right, and this is going to open even bigger doors for me in the future. Right, if I choose to stay in this hospitality field. So, at 20, that mistake cost me a bit of sleep, right? A bit of tiredness and a bit more financially, right? But at 44, with a mortgage and, family and fixed commitments, that same move could have cost me. It could have cost me much more. You know what I mean? So, the only point I'm trying to make, guys, is that your 20s are where you trade comfort for growth. Okay, like you have to get decisive on that. You cannot afford to be comfortable in your 20s, because that's literally the best time of your life when you build your life and you climb the fucking corporate ladder, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And there's also an element of fear. Like, the funny part is that people fear making mistakes, right, when they're young, but they hope to figure life out when they're older, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, that's backwards. You don't figure life out through comfort. You figure it out through friction. The more friction there is in your life, the more you'll figure things out, right? So, like, through trial and error, right? And that only happens when you're moving your pieces on the chessboard. And and like, again, it can also only happen when you're making a lot of mistakes. You have to make mistakes. You have to do what feels uncomfortable to be able to grow and learn in life, right? Your 20s are meant to be messy. You're supposed to take a job that doesn't make sense, or date someone who teaches you what you don't want, or someone who's toxic, or try a business idea that crashes, or I don't know, fucking move to a city that humbles you or some shit. I don't know. Like think of your brain as a computer's CPU, right? Every mistake you make now is just data for your 30s or your 40s, right? Because you won't repeat the same mistakes later down the line, right? Every failure is a note for your next playbook, if you would. So, I think that's how you go about calibrating your internal compass, right? I think that's I would say the best approach. Don't be fearful in your 20s, because life gets more expensive as you get older. Okay, your time becomes more expensive, right? Your decisions will carry more weight in your 40s and your 50s than they will in your 20s. Okay, your responsibilities also multiply later down the line. So every move you make on the chessboard, it has to be careful. Like, it has to be carefully made. So, yeah, if you don't burn your hands now, you'll you'll burn your whole house later down the line. You don't want to be 42 and finally realize that you hate your job and you hate your life, but you can't quit because your kids need private school, or or you won't be able to put food on the plate if you didn't have a job, right? You don't want to be 38 still learning how to pick a partner because you were too scared to date anyone imperfect at 23, or you were scared of approaching that girl that you saw behind the bar who was cute. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not the easiest thing to do. It is definitely much more easier said than done. Stop overthinking, okay? Go make mistakes while they're still cheap, Start that side hustle, even if it fails, Say yes to that job even if it's uncomfortable, Talk to that girl even if it goes nowhere. Fucking do it. I asked a girl out a couple of days ago. She said she had a boyfriend. Whether she did or not, don't give a fuck. I felt relieved afterwards. She wasn't even that cute. I just did it because my friends thought I was a pussy, right? But every mistake you make in your 20s, guys, it builds the wisdom that you need in your 30s and your 40s. Okay, you can't skip the struggles and expect the reward, right? The pain is a tuition fee for your education in life. Think of it that way, okay? Stop playing it safe. Play smart. Make mistakes, okay? Make as many as you can whilst you're young. Educated and smart mistakes. You know what I mean? Not dumb shit. Don't get drunk and drive and, then wonder why you're behind the bars. Do you know what I mean? Not that sort of mistakes. Like, educated decisions that may go wrong but will teach you later down the line, okay? Like the Eagermans I'm building right now, guys. This might not work. Who knows? This, sitting in front of a camera, doing all this shit, building a website, speaking with the suppliers, this might all just be a waste of time. But guess what? It's better to do this at 22 than it is to do at 40. Because I have less to lose right now. I have more space. I've got more space to move. You know what I mean? But yeah, I hope you found some value in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care for now.